I would like to start my presentation by expressing my gratitude to the Department of Political Science at the Università Roma III and all the sponsors for providing this great opportunity to bring together an interdisciplinary academic community to evaluate, explore, and just have a dialogue about Venezuela's situation. A little background about me. My name is Deyanira García. I'm currently a PhD candidate in the Department of Education Administration and Human Development at Texas A&M University. My program is Human Resource Development, or HRD, as you will hear me use this acronym or refer to this acronym throughout my presentation. I have a Master of Science in Educational Technology. My research interests include refugee resettlement, migration policy, technology and online education, digital divide, adult learning, and career development, among others. The research focus of my dissertation is on Venezuelan refugee professionals and their career adaptability upon resettlement in South Florida, United States. You may be wondering, or not, why I chose South Florida. The reason is that 52% of all Venezuelan refugees, asylum seekers, and immigrants reside in this area. My presentation today centers around my most recent scholarly article, which was published by the International Human Resource Development, which is an academic journal based out of the United Kingdom. The title of my article as an HRD professional is Brain Drain in Venezuela, the Scope of the Human Capital Crisis. It was very important for me to write this paper because I wanted to reach the academic community in my area, because I noticed that faculty in my department and in some of the international conferences I attended had a very superficial knowledge of the problem, maybe through what they see or watch or read in the media, or what the media reports in general here in the US and abroad in other countries, but we're not aware of the extent of the crisis and what Venezuelans have had to endure for more than 2 decades. Okay, this is how I define the problem. The magnitude of brain drain and talent crisis in Venezuela is the result of a complex combination of poor policy implementation, mismanagement, corruption, and socio-economic and political conflict. Talent shortage has sparked primary debates around the globe. As the challenges of talent management are ongoing cause of problems for many countries. In the case of Venezuela, as expected, the government has not taken the measures to stop the flow of talented human capital out of the country, to the point that the government stopped altogether reporting any data on migration flows. The exodus of highly skilled professionals diminishes the country of origin's capacity for economic growth and social development, technological innovations, and scientific research. Venezuela represents an unprecedented case for immigration movements among Latin American countries. In the 1970s, Venezuela was a wealthy and prosperous nation. It had used its resources and wealth to promote education, health, and housing. Venezuela was a receptor country for immigrants from Latin America and other continents who were usually fleeing from dictatorship regimes, economic downturns, or insecurities or safety. However, as we all know, during the 1980s, Venezuela experienced a series of economic and social failures, which led to the election of socialist Hugo Chavez Fría as president in 1998. Following his implementation of the so-called socialism of the 21st century, the migration of the country's most qualified professionals took a very serious turn. While the personal consequences of this exodus have included career interruptions and separated families, the national consequences have undermined the future of the country. In this global knowledge society, loss of highly skilled professionals jeopardizes the possibilities of local development in critical areas. According to a demographic study by Requena and Caputo in 2016, apart from the obvious economic impact of brain drain, which oftentimes is the focus of much of the literature you encounter, brain drain has hit the academic arena particularly hard. For Venezuela, the loss of talent involves many professions, most notably scientists, researchers, oil industry experts, and physicians. The opportunities to work in other countries are particularly important incentives for the scientific community. Furthermore, national scientific policies that are based on clientelism instead of meritocracy can also generate discontent and social repulsion, and are notable elements of the famous push-pull mechanism associated with brain drain. The pull factor meaning better work and life conditions in other countries. As for brain drain of scientists from Venezuela, from 1960 to 2014, Venezuela lost 1,670 scientists, which is 13% of Venezuela's 12,850 publishing researchers, and the national strike of 2002 and 2003 and the massive firing of oil industry workers marked the beginning of that sector's human capital flight. Because job opportunities for top managers and engineers with high levels of expertise that demanded high salaries were scarce or non-existent. Or the government threatened the companies who would hire them, so they had no choice. Shortages of basic goods, including medical professionals and medical supplies in Venezuela, is widespread and well documented. Thousands of these professionals have emigrated from Venezuela, leaving the national health care system in a deepening crisis. The president of the Venezuelan Medical Federation, Douglas Leon Natera, warned that more than 26,000 doctors have left the country in recent years due to the frustration of the lack of supplies, lack of medications, and extremely low salaries. In 2017, the Federation registered a total of 22,600 physicians who had left the country, but the number had increased to 26,160 by 2018, representing an increment of 4,000 doctors in just 1 year. Very serious. A large number of multinational corporations operating in Venezuela until recently, the vast majority of which had headquarters in the United States, in Europe, and some in Asia. These multinational corporations have been affected by the hostile economic environment. I mean, nobody wants to operate and lose and don't have any earnings. In 2017, the government seized General Motors auto plant, and although this was not the first time the government had expropriated assets from an international operating company, this was a highly publicized event. GM had been operating in Venezuela since 1948. And following this decision, the company halted its Venezuelan operations and laid off approximately 2,700 workers. In a statement, GM described the takeover as an illegal judicial seizure of its assets. And GM, what did it do? Relocated its top talent to other offices in Latin America and beyond. The travel sector has been strongly affected by the downturn also, and more than 14 airlines have stopped operating since 2015, leaving very few alternatives available to Venezuelans looking to travel overseas and creating more unemployment. Although the government has not released, as usual, official figures of employment losses, it's estimated that these shutdowns have caused the loss of more than 50,000 direct employments and 200,000 indirect employment. On top of that, and to make matters worse, on May 15, 2019, the U.S. Department of Transportation, DOT, received a notice from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, detailing their findings regarding the security situation in Venezuela and recommended the suspension of all passenger and cargo flights between the United States and Venezuela. As a result of this notice, American Airlines, which had been operating in the country for 33 years and was the largest airline connecting Venezuela to the United States, suspended all flights indefinitely. With globalization, the discussion on brain drain has shifted to a term coined as brain circulation or brain exchange to describe for the loss of talent. So a new goal is the mobility and exchange of highly skilled resources between the country of origin and the host country. sort of to create a nexus, a tie between local and global scientific and technology development communities, and for individuals and groups to collaborate and become what is called as knowledge transfer agents. Argentina, for example, has developed Raíces, which is a national strategic policy plan aimed at strengthening links between Argentinian researchers living abroad while simultaneously taking proactive actions and providing incentives that promote their return and retention in the country. One notable exception to Venezuela's lack of initiative in promoting this collaboration links is the initiative by Dr. Kerdel Vegas. In 1995, Venezuelan Ambassador Francisco Kerdel Vegas and the delegation of Venezuela to the Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization UNESCO in Paris founded TALVEN. The primary objective of TALVEN was to create a direct communication channel between Venezuelans residing abroad who had exceptional and outstanding performance in their professional fields with their colleagues and students of similar discipline in Venezuela. So, under the auspices of UNESCO, Talven financed these experts to travel to Venezuela for, let's say, a week of collaboration and exchange of ideas and projects. The research work that emerged between domestic and foreign institutions had an enormous impact, and most importantly, created this atmosphere of knowledge sharing and transfer. So this project could have begun to reverse the talent drain and move towards brain circulation, but the turmoil in the country, including the national strike, escalated soon after Chavez was elected president. So this conflict hampered ongoing face-to-face collaboration meetings, and since then, as we all know, Venezuela's intense and deteriorating political and social conflict has all but ceased any further collaboration, unfortunately. The government of Venezuela has not developed a consistent policy that is designed to entice Venezuelan professionals to stay in the country, given the situation that's hard, but at least to entice those who have emigrated to cooperate at any level, including knowledge generation centers, university research centers, the private sector even, research institutes, or government entity, but that's harder. That's harder to achieve. This problem and lack of initiative have direct implications for the field of human resource development. During the implementation of the 21st century socialism, the state has seized or expropriated companies affecting their productivity, such that many companies are operating at minimal capacities. And many of these companies have closed, leaving thousands unemployed and relocating top talent elsewhere. So in this model, in the current model, a meritocratic system is not a viable option. The economic model and ideology that prevails in the country in any country has direct influence on human resource management and human resource development in organizations. It affects what they do, how they do it, their mission, their vision, and even their values. So in the current situation or the current scenario, discussing, for instance, performance evaluation, which is a vital part of HRD, becomes nearly impossible. The effectiveness of training efforts are not or cannot and are not evaluated, and career plans may be scarce or non-existent. So the measures have thus far been taken by the government have made the contemporary models of human resource management and human resource development non-viable options for companies to adopt. It's like they are on survival mode. They're not going to work on training. They're not going to do anything like that for their employees. They probably want to, but the situation in the country does not allow them to do so. So the backward policies have allowed the adoption of obsolete models adapted to the national reality. But when democracy returns, the new government will face the daunting task of developing a national human resource development policy. At the same time, has to manage major labor and educational cultural shifts as a foundation for change and progress. This has to happen. At the same time, has to manage major labor and educational cultural shifts as a foundation for change and progress. This has to happen. HRD practitioners will play a pivotal role in implementing these changes. The top priority will be reversing, I think, the damage caused by more than 2 decades of failed policies under the socialism of the 21st century model. This will be especially significant, which is a very important point for younger generations who were raised in an environment that rewards nepotism, opportunism, and chronism instead of education, job performance, and merit. NHRD can add immense value as a framework for exploring global economic crisis. And now with COVID-19, unemployment numbers are skyrocketing everywhere. So this is even more relevant now. NHRD is much more than preparing the labor force. It covers a wide range of areas such as labor force planning and human capital investments, which are critical. NHRD goes beyond employment and preparation for employment issues. From a holistic perspective, the development of a nation's most important assets, its human capital, includes welfare, education, personal liberties, individual and national safety, and overall well-being. The case of Venezuela illustrates the need to go beyond employment and when the time comes to prepare for the restoration of the country. We need to start practically with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In conclusion, the exodus of Venezuela's highly skilled human capital has been motivated by the policies implemented by the socialist regime with the gradual loss of liberties and we all know growing violence and criminality. Professionals' inability to grow and develop and their search for better working and living conditions has been the trigger for the continuous talent flight. Particularly those with academic preparations that are or skills that are in high demand, they have left the country and secured jobs in more prosperous and safer nations. Under the current government, there are no opportunities for growth and development. Thus, when a new government system is elected, hopefully soon, the Venezuelan society needs to overcome the barriers for the productive development of the country. HRD has the task to drive a workplace paradigm shift, as I mentioned before, beginning with rewarding productive work through market competition and workers' compensation according to performance and merit, and not based on other privileges as we have seen, such as political affiliation, for example. Likewise, the establishment of clear rules and the eradication of impunity and cronyism are imperatives for real progress. Another important requirement is overcoming the obstacles that prevent people from using their accumulated human capital to generate income. This is particularly important in Venezuela given that the talent crisis has produced a demand contraction of skilled jobs, mainly due to the reduced national and foreign investments. Access to proper health care is a top priority. Having a long and healthy life is a starting condition for people to develop their current and future potential. Hence, healthcare initiatives should first focus on reducing morbidity and mortality levels due to highly preventable causes, such as malaria. It's impossible we still have malaria in Venezuela. The crisis in Venezuela is serious, and its eventual recovery will be a Herculean but achievable task. Solutions to the most immediate priorities that address basic human needs must be implemented before NHRD and HRD policies can effectively begin the process of developing and unleashing the true potential of the Venezuelan people. Thank you so much for your attention to my presentation and for the opportunity to share the HRD perspective. And I look forward to learning from other disciplines. Thank you.